I never thought I'd be the guy who got cheated on. I mean, I'm a decent husband, I think. My name is Jake, and my wife Linda and I had been married for 6 years. We met in college, where I thought we were a match made in heaven. She was smart, charming, and had a way of lighting up a room with her laughter. But if I'm being honest, things changed over the years. The spark that once held our relationship together flickered out, and I started noticing shifts in her behavior. At first, it was subtle. Linda would come home late from work with no explanation, always in a rush to get ready for some after-hours meeting. I tried to be understanding, thinking she was just advancing in her career. I even encouraged her to pursue her ambitions. But deep down, something felt off. She started being more secretive with her phone, locking it and barely letting me see her texts or calls. I remember one evening, sitting on the couch, scrolling through social media while she was in the bathroom. A message popped up on her phone from some guy, named Mark, with a heart emoji. And my gut sank. I wanted to dismiss it as nothing, but that little voice in my head wouldn't shut up. I began to pay more attention, and the signs became glaringly obvious. Linda's wardrobe started to change. She began dressing more provocatively. She'd come home with this vibrant new perfume that she swore was just a gift from a coworker. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but my instinct screamed something was wrong. One day, I decided enough was enough. I needed to confirm my suspicions. I found her planner hidden in the back of the drawer, a place she'd never left it before. Flipping through the pages, I noticed an unusual amount of meetings and appointments with Mark. I felt like I was suffocating, the walls closing in around me as panic and betrayal washed over me. I had to know. I just had to. So I did something I wasn't proud of. I checked her phone when she went to shower one afternoon. I know it was a breach of trust, but I was desperate. I opened her text messages and, to my horror, found a thread filled with flirty exchanges. Every heart emoji, every inside joke, every promise of getting together. It was all there, laid out like a cruel joke. I couldn't breathe. I felt sick. I was staring at the words that confirmed my worst fears. Linda was having an affair with Mark, my childhood enemy. Mark had bullied me throughout school, and now he was sleeping with my wife. The anger bubbled inside me, a raging storm. I felt betrayed, not just by my wife, but by someone I had despised all my life. The thought of them together made my blood boil. I couldn't just sit back and let this happen. I had to confront her, but the idea terrified me. What would I even say? When she came back into the room, I was still holding her phone, my heart racing. She noticed the look on my face and immediately asked what was wrong. I threw the phone on the coffee table, and the moment she saw the screen, her face went pale. It was as if the world paused for a moment. She stammered, trying to come up with some excuse, but I could see the guilt etched across her face. "Jake, I can explain," she blurted out, her voice shaky. "It's too late for explanations, Linda," I said, my voice low. I was fighting back tears, but I couldn't let her see me break. How long has this been going on?" Her eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape, but there was none. "Just a few months," she stuttered, the words spilling out in a rush as if she was trying to convince both of us. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It just happened. Just happened." Those words felt like poison. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to make her feel the pain she caused me. Instead, I stood there, feeling utterly crushed. I was angry, sad, and heartbroken all at once. "Months," I echoed, barely able to contain the tremor in my voice. "How could you do this to us, to me?" She tried to reach for my hand, but I flinched away. I couldn't let her touch me. I didn't want her comfort. As we stood there, silence enveloped us, punctuated only by her sobs. I felt my heart fracture. This wasn't just infidelity, it was betrayal on so many levels. I never thought I'd be in this position, or that I'd be standing in front of the woman I loved, feeling so utterly lost. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a long and twisted journey towards revenge and redemption. I had a plan forming in my mind, a way to reclaim my life and ensure that they would lose everything. I just needed to gather my strength and figure out my next move. After that heartbreaking confrontation, I managed to find a semblance of calm. I didn't want to show Linda the depth of my hurt. I wanted to be strategic about my next steps. The betrayal was raw, but I knew I couldn't let my emotions blind me. This was a chance to turn the tables. I had to think like a predator, not a victim. I spent the next few days in a haze, barely able to concentrate on anything. I went to work, but my mind wandered back to Linda and Mark, and the images of them together tormented me. I had always been a loyal husband, and now here I was, left with nothing but shattered trust. The thought of them laughing together, sharing intimate moments, made my stomach churn. I felt like a character in a bad soap opera, but this was my reality. I started to gather information about their affair, piecing together bits of evidence like a detective on a case. I remembered Linda's calendar and the meetings she had scheduled with Mark. I kept a close eye on her phone and even enlisted the help of a friend who worked in tech to retrieve deleted messages. It turned out there were more than just flirty texts. There were plans to meet up, rendezvous hidden in the shadows of my own home. Each revelation fueled my anger and determination. Then came the day when everything changed. I was sitting at my desk, going over some paperwork, when a notification popped up on my phone. It was a message from Linda, asking if I could pick her up from a bar downtown. She claimed some of her coworkers were celebrating a promotion, and she had won too many drinks. I feigned ignorance, pretending to be the supportive husband. Inside, I was seething. I decided to turn this opportunity into a tactical advantage. I'd pick her up, but I wouldn't go empty-handed. I called up a couple of friends who were eager to help me with my revenge plan. John, my best buddy since high school, had a knack for getting people to talk, and he was always up for a good scheme. I asked him to meet me at the bar before I picked Linda up. When I arrived at the bar, I saw her through the window, laughing a little too hard at something Mark had said. That sight alone ignited a fire in me. I pushed down the urge to storm in there and confront them both right then and there. I had to play this smart. I needed proof of their affair, and tonight would provide just that. John was already inside, chatting with a couple of her coworkers, planting seeds of doubt and intrigue. I sneaked in quietly, positioning myself at the end of the bar where I could watch Linda without being noticed. After a few minutes, I saw Linda and Mark getting cozy, sharing drinks and leaning in closer as they whispered to each other. I felt my fists clench. No matter how calm I appeared on the outside, inside I was a storm ready to break. I quickly texted John about what I was seeing, and he nodded, ready to execute the next part of our plan. John sidled up to Linda and Mark, pretending to be looking for a friend, and casually dropped in. "Hey, Linda, didn't expect to see you here. How's the work scene? Heard you've been hanging out a lot with Mark." The moment the words escaped his mouth, I could see Linda's eyes widen in panic. Mark tried to play it cool, but I could see the tension ripple through him. "Oh, hey, John. Just celebrating," Linda said, her voice a little too high-pitched. I let the scene play out from my spot, taking in every detail, the stiffening in Linda's shoulders, the nervous laughter. It was a beautiful sight, watching her squirm under the weight of her own lies. John carried on the conversation, weaving in questions about how her marriage was going, all while keeping the tone light and playful. I could see Linda struggling to maintain her facade. After what felt like an eternity, I decided it was time to make my move. I walked over, a casual grin plastered on my face. "Hey, babe, sorry I'm late. Traffic was a nightmare." I leaned in, kissing her cheek, and then shot a glare at Mark, who was visibly sweating. "Jake, you made it," Linda exclaimed, her relief palpable. "Of course, I wouldn't miss this for the world," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. I could feel the tension in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. "Well, I should, get going," Mark stammered, his eyes darting between us. He grabbed his drink and practically bolted for the door. As soon as he left, I turned to Linda. "We need to talk," I said, my tone low. "Can't we just enjoy the evening?" she pleaded. "Enjoy? You mean while you're out here cheating on me?" I shot back, my anger bubbling to the surface. The confrontation spiraled from there. She was defensive, insisting that it was just a fling, that she loved me and was just confused. I couldn't believe my ears. Her excuses sounded rehearsed, and I started to wonder if she had been practicing them in the mirror. I knew I had to keep my cool, even though my heart felt like it was shattering into a million pieces. "There's nothing to figure out, Linda. You've made your choice, but you need to understand this isn't just going to blow over. I'm not going to be the fool you think I am." The emotional turmoil inside me was a tempest, but I was determined not to show it. I was ready to turn the tables on her to make sure she recognized the gravity of her actions. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my life. I had a plan forming in the back of my mind, a way to ensure that they both would lose everything they had taken for granted. I wouldn't let this betrayal define me. I would rise from the ashes stronger than ever. After that explosive confrontation at the bar, I realized I was loaded with more anger and determination than I had ever expected. Linda's pleas and half-hearted excuses were nothing but fuel for my fire. The reality of her betrayal weighed heavily on my shoulders, but I had a newfound clarity. I was done being the victim. It was time to take control of my life and craft a plan that would ensure Linda and Mark face the consequences of their actions. In the days that followed, I threw myself into my work while quietly strategizing my revenge. I gathered every piece of evidence I could find: text messages, the incriminating calendar entries, and even the snapshots of them together that John managed to capture with his phone during our little bar scene. The more I collected, the more I felt empowered. I was no longer the helpless husband. I was the one holding the cards. The first step in my plan involved enlisting a bit of help from my friends. I reached out to John and a few others to brainstorm ways to expose Linda's infidelity. I needed something more concrete than mere texts and a story nobody would believe. My goal was to create a situation that would not only expose Linda, but also humiliate her in front of her peers and Mark. Revenge, I figured, was best served cold, and I wanted to be strategic, not rash. One evening, while I was sitting on my couch going over documents and planning my next move, I had an idea. Linda mentioned once that she wanted to throw a big get-together for her friends to celebrate her promotion, the same promotion that was a backdrop to her affair with Mark. I'd use that event to my advantage. I would invite everyone she worked with, including Mark, and make sure the truth came out in a way that would leave no room for denial. I called John to share my plan, and he was in immediately. "Let's do this, man. We'll make sure they both regret everything," he said, excitement lacing his voice. I knew I could count on him. The day of the party arrived, and I worked hard to make it unforgettable. I meticulously planned the guest list, ensuring that Linda's closest friends and as many coworkers as I could get invited were there. I kept my demeanor light and cheerful, but inside, I was a ball of nerves and anticipation. I wanted to make sure everything went as planned. As the evening went on, laughter filled the air and drinks flowed freely. Linda was dressed to impress, completely oblivious to the storm that was brewing beneath the surface. I smiled and conversed with guests, but my eyes were always on Linda and the door, waiting for Mark to arrive. I could feel my heart racing as I watched her interact with her friends, her laughter echoing through the room. Finally, Mark walked in and the atmosphere shifted. He was greeted with open arms by Linda, who beamed at him like he was the last drop of water in a desert. I felt a surge of anger, but I reminded myself to stay composed. I had planned this evening to expose them both, and I needed to stick to the script. As the party progressed, I grabbed John and whispered my plan. "Let's get everyone's attention on the patio. I have a little surprise," I said, a sly grin spreading across my face. John nodded and started working his magic. He got everyone to gather outside under the twinkling lights of the patio, drinks in hand, oblivious to the tension that was about to unfold. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. "Hey, everyone, can I have your attention for a moment?" I called out, projecting my voice over the buzz of chatter. A few guests turned their heads, and slowly, everyone else followed suit. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate Linda's promotion. It's been an exciting time for her. And I thought it would be fun to do a little toast." Linda looked at me with a mix of confusion and apprehension. I felt a thrill of adrenaline rush through me. "But first, I want to share a few things that have come to light recently," I continued, locking eyes with Mark, who was standing awkwardly at the edge of the crowd. I pulled out my phone and projected the incriminating text messages on the patio wall using a portable projector I had set up earlier. The room fell silent, shock hanging in the air like a thick fog. Linda's face turned pale as the messages scrolled across the screen, revealing everything: the flirty exchanges, the plans to meet, the heart emojis. I could see Linda start to panic, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Mark's expression morphed from confusion to horror as he realized what was happening. The guests looked between the two of them, their faces a mix of disbelief and alarm. "Seems like Linda's been quite busy, huh?" I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Who knew celebrating a promotion involved sneaking around with your husband's childhood enemy?" The murmurs began among the guests, the whispers escalating into gasps. I couldn't take my eyes off Linda. The shock was palpable as she tried to compose herself, but the color had drained from her face. "Jake, wait, this isn't what it looks like," she shouted, her voice cracking. "Oh, really?" I replied, a smirk creeping across my face. "Because it looks like you've been having the time of your life while I've been sitting at home completely oblivious." "I can explain, please just let me explain," she pleaded, desperation creeping into her voice. But it was too late for explanations. I had stripped away her facade in front of her friends and coworkers. The humiliation was evident, and I could feel the satisfaction bubbling inside me. Mark, realizing he was trapped, tried to back away, but the crowd had already closed in around him. "Dude, this isn't cool," he muttered, his bravado fading. "It's not cool to sleep with your best friend's wife, Mark." I shot back, relishing the moment. The party spiraled into chaos. Linda was left scrambling to salvage her dignity as guests began to leave, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others shooting her pitying glances. I stood at the center of it all, feeling like I had won a battle I never wanted to fight. As the last guests trickled out, I felt an unexpected sense of relief wash over me. I had revealed the truth, and now Linda's world was crumbling around her. I knew there would be consequences for both of them, but I also understood that this was just the beginning of my journey to reclaim my life and find closure. I had finally ensured they would pay for their betrayal, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. I was ready to move forward, stronger and more determined than ever. With the party unraveling and the truth exposed, I felt a mix of triumph and relief as I watched Linda's world collapse. The looks on her friends' faces, the whispers behind her back, it was all more satisfying than I had imagined. I had finally taken control of my life and torn down the facade she had built around her infidelity. The reality of the situation sunk in slowly, like a wave washing over me. After the last of the guests left, I turned to Linda, who was sitting on the couch, her face buried in her hands. The vibrant woman I once knew was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. "Jake, I'm so sorry," she sobbed, her voice barely a whisper. "Sorry, is that really all you have to say?" I shot back, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and hurt. "You think a simple apology is going to fix this?" "I didn't mean for it to happen, I swear," she pleaded, lifting her tear-streaked face to meet my gaze. "It was a mistake, and I regret it every day." I had never seen her so vulnerable, but it didn't soften the blow of her betrayal. "A mistake? You've been lying to me for months, Linda. You didn't just slip up, you actively chose to betray our marriage," I said, my voice rising. "You made a conscious decision to be with him." Her tears flowed freely now, but they did nothing to stir the anger inside me. "I was confused, okay? I thought I was unhappy," she stammered, trying to explain herself. "But I still love you, Jake. This doesn't have to be the end." I shook my head, feeling a mix of disbelief and sadness. "You love me. You've destroyed everything we built together, and now you want me to believe that it can all go back to how it was." With my anger boiling, I decided to lay out the reality of our situation. "You're going to have to face the consequences of your actions, Linda. This isn't just about you anymore." We sat in silence, the weight of what had just happened hanging heavily between us. I could see the devastation on her face, and part of me felt a fleeting sense of empathy. After all, this was someone I had once loved deeply. But in that moment, I was more focused on my own emotional journey, on finding a way to reclaim my life and move forward. I made the decision then and there. I would file for divorce. There was no way I could ever trust her again, no matter how many tears she shed or how many apologies she offered. It was clear to me that I deserved better than someone who would so easily betray our vows. As I gathered my thoughts, I could see her panic set in. "Jake, please don't do this. We can work through this together," she implored, her voice trembling. "There's nothing to work through," I replied firmly. "You've made your choice. I won't be a consolation prize while you figure out your feelings." That night was filled with tension. Linda continued to plead her case, but I stood my ground. I began making plans for my future, starting with talking to a lawyer. I wanted to ensure that I was prepared for what was coming. I had lost so much, my faith in her and my sense of security, but I wasn't about to lose my dignity too. The next day, I met with a lawyer, a calm and collected woman named Sarah who specialized in family law. She listened to my story and laid out the options. I felt a sense of empowerment returning as I discussed child custody, division of assets, and the steps I needed to take for the divorce. "You're doing the right thing, Jake," Sarah assured me. "It's tough, but you deserve to be happy and to move on from this toxic chapter." As we went through the details, I felt a sense of clarity washing over me. I was taking control of my life again. This was my chance to not only reclaim my dignity but also to rebuild myself from the ground up. I left the meeting feeling lighter, ready to confront whatever came next. Back home, Linda was waiting for me, her expression a mix of desperation and fear. "Have you talked to a lawyer?" she asked, her voice tight. "Yeah, I have," I replied, keeping my tone even. "Jake, please," she begged, tears brimming in her eyes. "I'm scared of losing you. I'll do anything to make this right." "Anything?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "What does that even mean now? You don't get to put the pieces back together once you've shattered them. I can't keep doing this with you." The realization that the life we had built together was crumbling around us was palpable. It was painful, but I knew it was necessary. She had taken a leap off a cliff, and now I had to find a way to soar above the wreckage. In the coming weeks, I dove headfirst into the divorce process. I gathered evidence, made financial preparations, and reached out to friends for support. While Linda attempted to win me back with promises of change, I remained resolute. I needed to focus on myself and what was best for my future. The emotional toll of the process was exhausting, but I found solace in the support of my friends. John was there through it all, offering a listening ear and a shoulder to lean on. He reminded me of my worth and helped me see that I was capable of moving on from this betrayal. As I started to regain my confidence, I found myself daydreaming about a life beyond Linda. I envisioned travel, new friendships, and the possibility of love again. I wasn't ready to date, but knowing that the opportunity existed was a comforting thought. The fire of revenge that had burned inside me slowly transformed into a desire for personal growth. I no longer needed to focus solely on making Linda and Mark pay. My priority was healing and rebuilding my life. And as I saw the divorce papers getting closer to being finalized, a sense of freedom washed over me. I realized that I was not just moving on from Linda, but also from the pain and betrayal that had defined our relationship. I was reclaiming my identity, and there was no turning back. I had truly won in life, not through vindictive revenge, but by learning from the past and preparing for a future filled with possibilities. The journey was far from over, but I was ready to embrace whatever came my way. As the divorce proceedings continued, I found myself settling into a new routine. The initial storm of emotions, anger, betrayal, sadness, had begun to subside, replaced by a determination to focus on my own well-being. I started taking care of myself, both mentally and physically. I hit the gym more often, rediscovered hobbies I had set aside, and even started reading again, something I hadn't done in years. Every day felt like a step toward reclaiming the parts of me that had been overshadowed by Linda's betrayal. I reached out to friends I hadn't seen in a while. Some of them were surprised to hear from me, but they welcomed me back with open arms. Going out with them, laughing and sharing stories gradually helped me heal. I realized that I had a support system in place, and I wasn't as alone as I had thought. One evening, I found myself at a bar with John and a few other friends. We were reminiscing about old times, and I felt lighter than I had in months. The drinks flowed, and laughter filled the air. I was finally starting to have fun again, to let go of the heavy burden I had carried for so long. As I leaned back in my chair, I noticed a woman sitting a few tables away. She caught my eye. There was something about her smile that drew me in. Her name was Sarah and she was chatting with a couple of friends. I could see the warmth in her laughter, and for the first time since everything had happened with Linda, I felt a flicker of attraction. With a little encouragement from John, I approached her table, heart racing. "Hey there, mind if I join you?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Sure, I'm Sarah," she replied, her smile brightening. I introduced myself and we started chatting. The conversation flowed effortlessly. It felt refreshing to connect with someone new, someone who didn't carry the baggage of my past. We talked about everything, our jobs, interests, and even shared a few laughs about awkward moments in our lives. I felt a spark, but it was more than just attraction. It was the realization that I could move on and find joy again. As the night progressed, I found myself forgetting about the hurt that had once consumed me. For the first time in ages, I felt genuinely excited about life. Sarah was easy to talk to, and her energy was infectious. I walked her to her car when the night came to an end, and we exchanged numbers with promises to meet up again. From that night on, I started seeing Sarah more frequently. Every date felt like a breath of fresh air. She reminded me of who I was before I got lost in my marriage. We shared meals, went hiking, and even had deep conversations about life. Sarah was patient and kind, and it was clear she was genuinely interested in getting to know me. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings rolled on. Linda had tried to reach out multiple times, asking for a second chance. I responded to her messages with calmness, but I was firm in my decision. I had to protect my heart and acknowledge the irreversible damage she had done. It was difficult to witness her emotional turmoil, but I couldn't be the one to save her. I had to save myself. As the papers were finalized, I felt an incredible sense of relief wash over me. The weight I had carried for so long slowly lifted, and I no longer felt shackled by the past. I met with my lawyer one last time to review the details. "You're free to start anew, Jake," she said, her voice filled with encouragement. "You've done the hard work. Now it's time to focus on what makes you happy." I walked out of the office knowing that I had chosen the right path. I felt strong and liberated, ready to embrace whatever life had to offer. I immediately texted Sarah, asking her to join me for dinner that weekend. I wanted to celebrate this new chapter with someone who made me feel alive again. As I planned our date, I couldn't help but reflect on everything I had been through: the betrayal, the pain, the anger, and ultimately the journey of self-discovery and renewal. I had faced my demons and come out the other side, stronger and more resilient than ever. When the weekend arrived, I took Sarah to a cozy restaurant that had a great atmosphere. We enjoyed a delicious meal, and I found myself sharing more about my journey than I ever thought I would. I opened up about my divorce, about the heartbreak I had experienced, and how I was ready to embrace new opportunities. "I admire your strength, Jake," Sarah said, her eyes filled with sincerity. "It's not easy to go through what you did and come out with such a positive outlook." Her words resonated with me. I realized that I wasn't just moving on, I was growing. I was learning to set boundaries, to prioritize my happiness, and to understand that my worth was not defined by someone else's choices. As we finished our meal and shared a dessert, I felt something shift within me. I was ready to embrace the possibility of love again. I was no longer the broken man from a few months ago. I was someone who had faced adversity and emerged victorious. As we walked to the parking lot, I couldn't help but feel hopeful about my future. Sarah held my hand, and in that moment, I knew I had made the right choice in letting go of my past. I was opening my heart to new experiences, and it felt liberating. I looked forward to what lay ahead, knowing that I was no longer defined by my relationship with Linda, but rather by the strength I had found within myself. The journey wasn't over, but I had a newfound sense of direction. I was ready to conquer whatever challenges life threw my way, and this time I wouldn't be doing it alone. As my relationship with Sarah blossomed, I felt a renewed sense of purpose and joy that I had thought was lost forever. The darkness from my past had faded, replaced by light and laughter. I embraced every moment we spent together, each day reinforcing my decision to move on from Linda. The past was a chapter I had closed, and now I was ready to write a new story. Over the following months, Sarah and I grew closer. She was everything I had needed, supportive, understanding, and refreshingly honest. We shared our dreams and fears, our aspirations and goals. Sarah encouraged me to pursue my passions, and I found myself rekindling interests that I had neglected during my marriage. I took up photography, capturing moments in life that reminded me of the beauty in the world. But while I was building this new life, I couldn't entirely shake off the remnants of my past. I often found myself reflecting on the lessons I had learned through my ordeal. I had come to understand that love is not just about chemistry, it's also about trust, respect, and communication. I had learned the hard way that a relationship built on deceit crumbles under pressure, and I was determined never to repeat that mistake. Occasionally, Linda would reach out, wanting to talk or try to re-enter my life. Each time, I remained firm in my resolve. I responded politely but made it clear that I had moved on. It was crucial for my healing that I didn't allow her back into my life, not as a friend, nor as anything else. I had fought too hard to regain my sense of self, and I wasn't going to let her take that away again. One afternoon, I decided to meet up with John for coffee. We hadn't had a chance to catch up in a while, and I wanted to share how things had changed since I had started dating Sarah. As we sat down, I noticed the look of pride on John's face as I recounted my journey. "You've really come a long way, man," he said, raising his mug in a toast. "From the guy who was crushed by betrayal to someone who's found happiness again. It's inspiring." I appreciated his words. "Thanks, John. I couldn't have done it without your support. You were there when I needed someone to lean on." We talked about everything that had transpired, and I felt grateful for the friendship we had built over the years. John reminded me of the importance of surrounding myself with people who uplift me, and I was thankful for the solid friendships I had forged during my healing process. As the weeks turned into months, my relationship with Sarah continued to flourish. We took short trips together, visited new places, and explored our shared interests. Each adventure reminded me that life could be beautiful again. One weekend, we found ourselves hiking in the mountains, the sun shining brightly on our faces. As we reached a stunning viewpoint, I pulled out my camera to capture the moment. "Let's take a selfie," Sarah suggested, flashing a smile that lit up the whole scene. We stood together, arms around each other, beaming with happiness as I snapped the picture. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. I had come so far from the pain of my past. I had learned to embrace the unknown and trust that life had more in store for me. One evening, as Sarah and I were curled up on the couch watching a movie, I turned to her, feeling the warmth of her presence. "You know, I never thought I could feel this way again," I admitted, vulnerability creeping into my voice. "After everything I went through with Linda, I was afraid I'd never find happiness again." She looked into my eyes, her expression softening. "You deserve all the happiness in the world, Jake. You've been through so much and you've come out stronger. I'm just glad to be a part of your journey." Those words resonated deeply with me. I knew that I was finally in a healthy relationship, one built on trust and mutual respect. It felt liberating to experience love without the anxiety and fear that had plagued my marriage with Linda. Then, one evening, as we strolled through a park under the twinkling stars, I felt the urge to express my feelings to Sarah. "I know it's been a whirlwind, but I can't imagine my life without you anymore," I said, my heart racing. "I want you to know that I'm ready for the next step. I want you in my life for the long haul." Her eyes softened and a smile spread across her face. "I feel the same way, Jake. You've opened my eyes to what love can really be." In that moment, I realized that I had not only found someone special in Sarah, but also a sense of completeness within myself. I had overcome the pain of betrayal, learned to value my worth, and discovered what it meant to love and be loved in return. With every passing day, I felt more at peace with my past, understanding that it had shaped me but did not define me. I had turned the heartbreak into a foundation for resilience and growth, and I was ready to embrace whatever the future held. As we walked hand in hand, I knew that I had triumphed in life, not through revenge or bitterness, but by choosing to heal, grow, and open my heart to new possibilities. I was ready for whatever came next, confident that I could face it all head-on. The journey of self-discovery had transformed me, and I was grateful for every lesson along the way. I smiled softly at Sarah, filled with hope for the future, ready to write a new chapter, one where love, trust, and happiness would be the guiding themes.